Okay, today you folks get to hear from a Broadway veteran of 6 Broadway shows and a multi-award nominated actor, most known for his performances most recently in On the Town and Phantom of the Opera. Coming up, you can celebrate his birthday with him at 54 Below on September 1st. So everyone, welcome to Take a Bow, J. Armstrong Johnson.
Hey, Eli.
Hey! Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for you to be here. There's so many exciting things to talk about, not just your upcoming 54 Below show, but your entire resume. Come on, 6 Broadway shows, as you should. Um, the way I usually like to start these off is kind of asking my guests why we're here. Like, what got us into theater, and like, what was that just trigger moment for you that was like, that's what I want to do in my life?
Yeah, I remember thinking early on that I wanted to be a performer.
Mm.
Um, Singing in church was kind of the first time I really started singing in front of like what you would call an audience or a congregation. So that was kind of like my foray into performing, even though it was a religious setting.
Uh-huh.
And I remember being super excited about the like fifth grade play that Mr. Ingram's English class would put on. They'd put on a very abridged production of Romeo and Juliet every year. And so I remember as a third and fourth grader being really excited about getting into the fifth grade so I could possibly play Romeo in Romeo and
Hmm.
Juliet. Um, and then my sister played Juliet the year before me,
Yes.
and so I was like, okay, I've got to get Romeo. So I like wrote Mr. Ingram like a letter, and I was like, please consider me for the role of Romeo. Like, and what like fifth grade boy in Texas and like the
Right.
late '90s was like begging to wear white tights and recite Shakespeare in their cafetorium? You know what I
Oh
mean?
my god. That's
So
incredible.
but I think what solidified it for me was when I did my first like production, like with like a community theater. I did this community theater program called Kids Who Care Musical Theater, and
Oh.
my friends at church, who I sang in the choir with, invited me to this theater to audition because they were like, "Hey, you can sing. Like, you'll probably like this." Show this the theater company. So I auditioned for A Midsummer Night's Dream, the rock musical.
Yes.
Um, and I remember I got cast as one of the three pucks, me and two other actors. We were like, I don't know, 8, 10, and 12 or something like that. We were like a three-headed puck.
Oh my
And I
god, I
remember
love that.
I remember walking onto stage for the first day of tech rehearsals and feeling completely transformed. Like the lights that
Yes.
were created by my friend Chad Jung, the set that was created by Bob LaValle. I mean, like I was in a different world. And I
Right.
just remember thinking like, I have to chase this feeling for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, is there a lot like you said you're from Texas, is there a lot of theater involved? Like, is that something that's, like, kind of big out there?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that I kind of grew up in like a small town.
Right.
I've come to realize that like Fort Worth is actually like the 10th or 11th largest city in the country.
Oh!
But I kind of grew up between like cow pastures and like downtown big city. So
Right.
it it feels like a small town in certain regards, but yeah, theater is huge, and from
Yeah.
where I'm from, Dallas Fort Worth in general has so much culture, so much
Yeah.
theater. I mean, I think rodeos are pretty theatrical in like
Right.
and how they present to the world, you know. So theater has always been kind of there, and there's
Totally.
always been this contingency of like weirdo progressive artists in that world that kind of help battle those other conservative coalitions.
Yes. Right, right. That's okay though. What
That's right.
ignited like your move to New York? Like, what did you go come for college? What was it?
Yeah, I when I knew that like theater was my thing, and that like
Uh-huh.
when I kept getting validation from teachers or from people that were seeing shows to tell me like, oh, you could do this, like you should do this, you should pursue it. I just knew that like New York City is where to go, and that's where Broadway is. And so
Oh
I
my
kind of made a
gosh.
promise to myself and all my best friends that like did theater that like we were all going to go to NYU together, and we were all going to study musical theater, and like we were going to
Right.
move to the big city as soon as we graduated high school. And so I just did it. Um, I
Oh.
I didn't apply to any other colleges but NYU, and I said that if I didn't get in, that I would just move to New York to try to just make it happen for myself. So I had a really specific vision of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and I was hell bent on making it happen. And so I did get into NYU, which was lovely.
That's incredible.
But yeah, that was kind of how I made that choice.
It was like you manifested it. I mean, like this was it or it's nothing.
Yeah,
I love that
kind
though.
of.
Good for you. That's incredible. And now here
Thank
you
you.
are. I mean, it's worked out, right? I mean, here we are, 6 Broadway shows. Uh,
Yeah.
I love that. So most recently, you were seen on Broadway as Raoul in the historic run of Phantom of the Opera. What did it mean to you to be in like? I mean, it's the longest running Broadway show in history. Like, what was it like to be in the most historic show on Broadway?
I mean, it was truly wild. My friend Mary Michael Patterson had played Christine for a few years, and I remember seeing the show for the first time with her in the lead and just like crying the whole time. And I remember thinking very specifically as I watched that show, like, well, that'll be a show I never do in my lifetime. I never
Right.
saw myself in those roles in that world. So when the opportunity presented itself, it was way more for me about what it meant to continue this like relationship with Hal Prince.
Right.
Because I had done Candide at New York City Opera with Hal. And
Wow.
so he became a mentor of mine and kind of folded me into his family. And I would go over to their house and I would have dinners with them and he would give me advice. And, he just became this like grandfather figure to me, which just like
Wow.
to think about it now is like how the hell did Hal Prince become like
Right.
one of your mentors?
Yeah, that's incredible.
So when I got Phantom, it was because of Hal.
Uh huh.
I had reached out to him because I had found myself unemployed and a little nervous about my career and not sure if I could pay rent. And so he kind of gave me some advice. And also, at that time, they were looking for a replacement for Ralph. So he said, "You might be too young, but I'll see what I can do. I'll make a couple of phone calls." And a day later, I was auditioning for Phantom of the Opera, and I had like 3 different callbacks, and he really advocated for me. And then there I was with my next
Oh
Broadway
my
show, and
gosh.
I was able to pay rent, and Hal Prince
Yes.
co-signed me. So
I mean,
so it was special in that way because I got to continue that relationship for sure.
that's incredible. What a story. That's so cool. It's interesting you going back to saying that like that was a role that you kind of never saw yourself doing in Phantom and everything cuz a lot of your roles like they've been like dance heavy shows, you know? Like do you kind of like what do you consider your strongest suit?
Um, God, I like to consider my strongest suit just storytelling in general.
Uh-huh.
Because I studied dance so darn hard in high school and I studied voice so darn hard in college. But I've always had this knack for what it meant to actually tell a story. I remember watching older actors when I was a young kid, being like seeing who I liked and kind of gleaning from them what it means to be a good actor and how to tell a good story. So I I don't know. Because I love all three, singing and dancing and acting, like so
Right.
much. And it's been my kind of goal throughout my career to never put myself in a box. I never wanted anyone to be able to typecast me or put me in a position where I'm playing the same role over and over and over again. Um,
Right.
so that that was another thing that I like manifested. Like I want to do this dance show, but then I want to go over here and do this opera, but then I want to come over here and do this like bit comedy role off Broadway, and then I want to go here and do this television show where I play a rocket scientist. Like you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
every choice I've made along the way, I've wanted it to be completely different from all the choices I've made before, and the business, I mean, the industry has like gotten on board with it
Right.
in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, like when you look at your resume, it's like what like this has probably like one of the most dynamic resumes like anyone has in the industry. It's so like
Thanks.
it's yeah, it varies from so many different things. I mean, you literally made it on Broadway, you've made it in television, you made it like all over the place, and opera as well. Like you were doing opera at what was it? You did some opera at Lincoln Center, not Lincoln Center. There was
Oh, I mean,
it's
I
one
think
of
it was Sweeney Todd. It was technically
Sweeney.
like a musical theater
Yes,
opera, you know,
right. And
and the
I
way,
was looking at
yeah.
like, do you have like an operatic background, or like is that something you've been interested in?
Well, because I studied dance so hard in high school, I was a dance major at my performing arts high school, and then I would go and I would train at my dance studio every night. So dance was like my world in high school, and it was
Okay.
kind of the way that I kind of got my foot in the door in the industry because I was a young boy in Texas who could dance. And so that's how I kind of started getting professional roles as a young person in Texas because there weren't boys
Right.
no one was going to, there weren't many boys that could twirl in
Right.
Texas without having the fear of getting the shit kicked out of them. but
Y-
um, but so I made the distinct decision that college I really wanted to work on my voice, that I really wanted to play leading roles. And so
Hmm,
if I had all this dance training in high school, that I really needed to focus on what it meant to good vocal technique because
sure.
I could like people. I have a musical family. People sing in my family, but I never studied like voice. I never like really studied with a voice teacher or like learned
Hmm.
the technique of what it was to sing. So that was why I chose to go to a vocal performance program for college as opposed to like a BFA program, so I could really
Oh
hone
wow.
in on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So a lot of
I
that.
mean, yeah, I mean, that was like one of like the things that I kind of found, because like it's interesting when you do study voice like at such a young age, you then like build the muscle memories. I mean, it's just like that's what you do. Like you're learning
Right.
something and you build these muscle memories, and then your voice changes, and then you have to relearn it all again, and then it takes like even longer to learn it again. You know,
For
like
sure.
you know, I don't. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, but like
Uh,
it's good that like that's like when you like started to like really hone in and focus on that. It was like a good timing. It was a good choice. That's awesome. And then let's talk about, okay, this is my favorite thing ever. I saw you in On the Town, okay, and obviously you played Chip in On the Town. For those of you who don't know, how long were you with the show? Were you in it from like the beginning processes, like out of town and whatnot?
yeah, I was actually doing Hands on a Hard Body on Broadway, and we got the news that like we weren't selling very well and that we're going to have to close down. So my first audition after finding out that Hard Body was closing was On the Town at Barrington Stage Company, and so
Oh wow.
I was pretty devastated to like lose my first role on Broadway. I'd been understudying up to that point, and this was a show about Texans. You know, it was
Hmm.
this love letter to Texas, and it like took place and 2.5 hours away from where I grew up. So this show was so near and dear to my heart. So for it to be coming to a close, excuse me, so soon, was pretty devastating to me. So I kind of went into this audition for On the Town at Barrington Stage Company with my head kind of low and like sad that my Broadway show was going to be a thing of the past. So and it was a summer stock production. It was supposed to be 3 months of employment somewhere in Massachusetts. So it was just, I was an actor. I was about to be out of work. I needed work. I needed money.
Hmm.
So I went off and I did that thing. But when I got to Massachusetts, I realized like, oh, John Rando, who won a Tony for Urinetown, is directing this thing. Josh
Yes.
Bergas, who had fame from So You Think You Could Dance, is choreographing this thing. Alicia Umphris, Elizabeth Stanley, Tony Yazbeck, Clyde Alves, like all of these like major heavy hitting players in the theater world were all converging on this like tiny town in Massachusetts. And I
Right.
remember looking at Alicia and being like, this could go to Broadway. And she literally laughed in my face, like
Oh my
actually
god.
laughed at me because, there's always this when you do summer stock or when you do like an out of town show, there's always like buzz that it could go to Broadway, and then it's never the reality.
Hmm.
So I had this premonition that like, I don't know, this feels right and real and exciting. So I was with it from the beginning, to make a long story short, or to make a long story longer, rather. Yeah,
Yeah.
we started it in Massachusetts, and we brought Barrington Stage Company out of the red. They were, you know, kind of in the red financially, and our show literally brought them out, and everyone from New York started coming to Massachusetts to see this show. And then a year and a half later, after a bunch of workshops and dance labs, we found ourselves on Broadway at the Lyric Theater, and I had my
That's
first
insane.
leading role. It was wild.
Oh, I love that. Oh my god, what? That's so cool. I didn't realize that. Like, I mean, I guess like the out of town tryout wasn't really like meant to be an out of town tryout in a way.
It really,
That
yeah, it wasn't. It was a summer stock gig, you know?
Yeah, that's insane to me because like when you go and see the show and it just like talks about New York, like it's as
Right.
if it's like destined to be in New York, you know? It's like a
Yeah.
show for New Yorkers, and of course it's supposed to be on Broadway. That's insane. I love that so much. How much did like I mean, was there a lot of changes from the Massachusetts version to then when it came to Broadway? Like was your song always in it?
Yeah, my song was always in it. I think the major changes from Massachusetts to Broadway were that we cut a lot of the dance sequences for
Oh.
Massachusetts because our rehearsal process just wasn't that long to kind of do these extended ballet sequences. So
Oh.
we cut down those a bit. So those were re-implemented for Broadway, and then we actually brought on a script doctor. So we got some permission from I guess it was the Bernstein estate. And maybe who have to like actually go in and massage the script a bit and update it a little bit and add some like more jokes that were a
Relevant.
bit more, yeah, relevant,
Yeah,
contemporary. Because a lot of those jokes that were written back in the 40s, you know, they kind of go over our all of everyone's heads because they were so
sure.
niche. So yeah, those were the major changes: is the re-implementation of the ballet sequences and then a little bit of script doctoring. Yeah, that was it.
Oh my god. Talk to me about Come Up to My Place because that's literally like one of the most like you go see the show and that's like definitely one of the songs that like sticks with you. I don't know like what it is. It's like the simplicity of the choreography or the taxi cab, the way it's done. Like just tell me everything about it. I'm obsessed with that.
Well, that was fully John Rando's genius. He had
Mhm.
this vision of this one little bench. And when we did it at Barrington Stage Company, it was literally like the back seat of like a van that like they
Oh.
put on still. Like that was what we like rehearsed on. So it really, the choreography, all of the beats, all of the moments, like they're really John Rando's. It was his idea to have that lever that I like was laying down on that made me look like I was flying off the side of the cab. I mean, it really was,
Right.
it was his baby, that moment. So I, you know, I love physical comedy. I've always done physical comedy. I'm a dancer, so
Yes.
I loved that I could put my own spin on it. But it really was John Rando that just had this vision, this idea of how it could be executed.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah,
insane. The way that you guys were able to like it was all like comedic timing, honestly. Like you
yeah,
guys you could tell like you said like every beat was mastered. Like
for
every you
sure.
had everything and like kudos to both of you but also to John Rando. I mean,
Ugh,
he's brilliant. I
he's
mean,
genius.
yeah, he did A Christmas Story. He directed me in A Christmas Story.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
Oh my, and of course Tony Yazbek was in Finding Neverland with me. And so
Ugh,
like it's like full circle moment. I appreciate On the Town for all the right reasons. And now
ugh.
of course you. Um yeah. So wait, okay, I want to talk to you about Newsies. Okay, because like I look at you, right? And I just see Jack Kelly. I don't know like what it is, but like you are like the perfect Jack Kelly and you were able to do it at the Muni. Talk to me about like that experience and what that like role is.
I mean, I've loved the Newsies movie since I was a kid, and
Mm.
so when I heard it was coming to Broadway, I was like, oh God, I really want this. I really want this. So I think when they did their very last reading production, like workshop of the show before it went to Paper Mill, I
Oh.
played Jack Kelly in that reading. I'm pretty
Oh
sure
my
it was
god.
because Jeremy Jordan was off shooting some movie or some television show, so I was probably just a placeholder. But I
Oh.
did that final workshop before Paper Mill, so I got excited about the prospect of playing it on Broadway back then. And
Yes.
then when it was going to Broadway after Paper Mill, Jeremy was doing Bonnie and Clyde on Broadway. And so it's like, oh,
Right.
good. Jeremy's in Bonnie and Clyde. This is my chance, right? So then
Yes.
I believe I could be making this up just for hype, for just for like storytelling purposes, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened. I think the day of my final callback for Newsies was when they announced that Bonnie and Clyde was no longer going to be running on Broadway, and so I like
Oh
sank.
my
And I remember
God.
walking in for my final callback for Newsies on Broadway, and them just like checking out. Like I could tell that the whole room wasn't really looking at me for the
Right.
possibility of playing, so it's like, oh, there goes that dream. So,
Right.
so when the Muni launched their season, what was that, 3 or 4 years ago now? I became really good friends with the artistic director at the Muni, and I literally just sent him a text message, and I was like, Mike, if you haven't found your Jack Kelly, I just want to throw my hat in the ring. I will come in for an audition for you. I've wanted to play this role. I got so close to Broadway. Let me know. Um, Peace and love, J. Armstrong Johnson. And he just texted me back and said, it's yours. It was like
Oh my
that.
God.
It was that easy.
Wow.
So that was a lesson that I learned, like, ask for what you want. um,
Yes.
but it was super fun because I remember Chris, the director choreographer, I told him on the first day, I was like, I'm a dancer, so utilize me in dance sequences. I know that that's not usually what happened in the Broadway show. Jack like would exit stage right before all the major dance sequences, but I was like, I'm not as good as a Ryan Steele or as a Chris Rice or sorry, as a Clay Thompson. I was
Right.
like, but I know that I could do some sequences, so please utilize me in that way. And he did. So I was probably the first Jack Kelly to actually be able to do some of the major dance sequences and like lead the Newsies in that regard. But I
Oh
love
my
that.
God.
I love that dang show so much.
Oh my God, it's so freaking good. It's just
Ugh,
like one of the most iconic shows. Oh my God. But
I
it's
know.
not also but it's also not like the most like normal show, like especially with that like role of Jack Kelly and the fact that you were like implemented in all of the dance sequences and everything. Like it's got to be vocally, physically, emotionally, like mentally, like it's got to be so demanding on you. Like did you notice yourself like preparing for that show differently than like the other shows that you've been in?
Yeah, I remember working out a lot. Like I would actually go
Yeah.
to the gym every morning before rehearsals to really get my stamina up. And Santa Fe is probably one of the harder songs that I've ever had to do on stage. The coolest thing
Right.
about the Muni is that it's hot as balls outside, and so like you like just to get from your dressing room to the stage is your warm up. So you're already sweating. you
Right.
know, it's, and then you're doing like the big fight scene right before Santa Fe. So like my breath and my blood were flowing
Adrenaline.
and going. So
Yeah.
yeah, and the adrenaline was up there, and I had to like climb a bunch of ladders. I mean, that set was huge. But yeah, I don't know, because I had done the reading of it like whatever 6 years prior to that. I still had the words in my body. I still had the
Mhm.
dialect in my body. So it was kind of just revisiting an old friend, and doing it in 98-degree weather.
Oh, I love that. Wait. Speaking of revisiting an old friend, you did a chorus line on tour, and then you did it on at encores. So,
Yeah.
but you played two different roles. But you played two different roles, which I think is very, very cool. Talk to me about that experience because you went from Mark to Robbie, right?
Yeah. Mark to Bobby.
Bobby. Oh my God, what am I doing?
No,
Yes.
you're good. You're good. But yeah, I got my equity card doing a chorus line at like the theater company that I grew up with back home in Texas. So that was the first time that I did it, and I played Mark. And so I got my equity card at age 18. And so then when I moved to New York, to go to school at NYU,
Mm-hmm.
a chorus line was happening on Broadway. So I was skipping classes on a regular basis to go to open calls for a chorus line. Like
Sure.
it was kind of my intention to drop out of school once I got here. That's why I just wanted to get to New York so I could go on Broadway auditions, right? So for a year and a half, I was auditioning for a chorus line Broadway replacements, and I never got cast because my friend Paul McGill, who was playing Mark on Broadway, didn't want to leave his role, which I totally get. So when the first national tour came around, I auditioned for that, and then finally they cast me my junior year of college, and I dropped out of school and never looked back. So
Yes.
now, And that was 10 years prior to the one at City Center. So
Right.
when Bjorkley and our late great Bob Avian asked me to do the City Center's production, it had literally been a decade since I'd done a chorus line. So for them to come and ask me to play Bobby, which was one of the older people on the line, as opposed to when I played Mark, who's one of the younger people on the line, it was just a really cool way to revisit an old friend and see old friends. I mean, it was Bob and Bjork that put it up on tour, and then they were putting it up at City Center, and I got to see Robin Herder again,
Yeah.
and Denis Lambert, like there, and Anthony Wayne, like there were these friends that I met on tour that also converged on the City Center production. So it was dreamy, and it was also really nice to only do it for a week.
Yes, right. That's right.
Because
But
that's
it
a
was
hard show.
oh my god, I can't imagine. But so like another cool thing about that was just like it was an anniversary like kind of celebration, right? For Chorus Line. So
Right.
like not only are you like performing at City Center, which is like historic in itself, it was also like celebrating their anniversary. Like I don't know, like did you feel like an added pressure, like an added like oh my god, this is like amazing. Like was there anything like heightened, I guess, for this compared to the tour?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was 10 years older, and so there was a bit more of like some like wisdom about what it means to be a performer and how to prepare for a
Mm,
show that I didn't have when I was 19, 20 years old.
right.
But I was also doing Phantom of the Opera at the time. They allowed me to take a few weeks off to go do this. I was also producing my Halloween show at the time, so I was essentially doing three different things all at once. And so I
Right.
didn't really have time to think. I just had to go to the next place, do my job, and then go to the next place, right? So I didn't think too hard about it. I was just happy to be doing it, to be dancing that show again, to be doing it in such an iconic venue, to be playing a role that I just loved when
Right.
for so long. I remember being Mark at the end of the line and watching Bobby's monologue and being like, I'm going to do that one day. And then,
Yes.
manifestation, man, manifest, manifest.
I love that. Literally, like, this is so funny how many full circle moments that you've had, like, of
It's
just being
wild.
like, yeah, like, it's just like right time, right place, right time. That's amazing.
Mhm.
You don't have to be shy. Your Halloween show that, like, kind of was just like brushed over. You like created and starred in a show that called I Put a Spell on You, and it benefited Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, which raised so much money. Talk to me about this. You don't have to be shy. That's not what this is
I'm,
about.
I mean, Hocus Pocus is my favorite movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to pretend like it's not. I am a queer little boy, and Halloween is my favorite time of year. And so I remember as a kid being like, I will be Winifred for Halloween one year, but I can't half-ass it. So when I got my television show, I had like some money in the bank, and like I was like, well, what am I going to do with this money? I want to start producing my own things. And so I had done a solo show at 54 Below that I turned into a live album. And we were going to
Uh-huh.
do an album release concert. And the album release concert was happening in the fall. And so I was like, what if we did a Halloween album release concert? What if I did it as Winifred Sanderson? So I just like started dreaming and like brought my friend DW on to like do some costumes and brought my friend Katie Beatty on to do wigs. And so we just put together this like CD release Halloween concert and essentially did all the songs from my album dressed as the Sanderson sisters. So
Oh my god.
that was the seed of it. And then when I realized that we had the costumes and we had the wigs, and I was like, well, we should just keep doing this. We should just make this an annual event. And so that's when I started dreaming, like, I hope we can maybe make this a bigger event at like a larger venue and like maybe make it a benefit for Broadway Cares, because around that time I started doing Broadway Backwards and I started doing Broadway Bears, and so I was doing a lot of events with Broadway Cares and falling in love with their mission and with their whole business, their whole
Sure.
organization rather. So that was another thing that I manifested is like, Broadway Cares is going to come on board. Broadway Cares is going to come on board, and they finally did last year when the pandemic kind of hit us. And we had to take our live cabaret show that we'd started doing at Le Poisson Rouge downtown in the West
Mm-hmm.
Village and translate it into like a visual album. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and we're already starting to figure out what the hell we're gonna do this year.
Oh my god, I'm so excited for it because okay, so many questions here. So, I guess I'll start off with like I mean, you talked about just it was going from a live concert and then to a virtual concert. Like, what were some of the obstacles that you kind of had to face with the whole COVID protocols? I mean, obviously you made it virtual, but like, how did it work?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw things starting to go virtual during the pandemic, um, uh, at first I was like, "Oh well, Halloween's not happening this year, whatever, it's fine." And then like I sat on it for a second, and then I realized that phase 4 of New York reopening was allowing television and film production again. And so I
Uh
just
huh.
kept seeing these things, and it kept pointing me in that direction. And I remember thinking one night, like, "Oh my God, what are you about to do?" like, but we did it. And I mean, everyone on the producing team had to go to COVID compliance officer training. Like we got PPE donated. We really like followed protocol on set. Everyone was wearing N95s. Um, and everyone that was asked to do the project, they had been sitting on their butts for 6 months, not doing anything, regardless of whether they were an actor or whether they were a director of photography or whether they were a costume designer, or everyone was like, okay, Broadway cares, yeah, let's go. And 150 some odd artists came on board to help pull this thing off, and
Right.
everyone showed up with their A game. And what was once just kind of like this like idea that I had was truly coming to fruition in this like beautiful way. And I was just allowing artists to come in and work. I was just like, "Hey, you want to do this thing?" And I'd give them a suggestion, and then they would take my suggestion and make something even better like out of it. I don't know.
Yes,
It was wild the way it all came together, and it was I don't know, it's some of the hardest work I've ever done, some of the longest hours I've ever worked, but
I'm sure.
also some of the most rewarding for sure.
Well, do you know if it's gonna be like virtual or live this year? Like, or
We
is that?
we're still teetering.
Uh huh.
We have a location scout happening today, actually, like right after I get off this interview. I'm
Oh,
going to look at a location with Katie Rosen and Danny Marin,
oh
my
my
associate
god.
producers. So we'll see. Because right now with the Delta variant and
Hmm.
with like indoor theater with there are mask mandates, and it's a Halloween party, and a lot of what the show is kind of the live show really is based around like the specialty cocktail. And so it's really trying to get the audience to drink the specialty cocktail the whole show. And so if there are mask mandates and like maybe you can't drink while watching the show, it's feeling like, oh God, the social party, dark and dirty underground club nature of what the show is when it's live doesn't feel like something we can really pull off with COVID still kind of looming.
Right.
Um, and it's we're the fall is kind of like flu season, and like
Yeah.
scientists are expecting like kind of a big wave of COVID to happen in the fall. So I don't want to be working toward a live show and then have it shut down, or maybe trying to get an outdoor venue but having it rained out. Like I'm so
My
I'm so
goodness.
at odds with myself as a
Yeah.
producer right now. Like I don't know what decision to make. Um,
Right.
but we're also kind of behind where we were last year in terms of what it means to do a virtual event. So it's, do we rehash what we did last year? Do we shoot a couple of new music videos and kind of edit them in? Like, so pray for me is what I'm saying,
Yes.
because
I
there's so many
mean,
unknowns right now.
right. I mean, just you talking about this kind of was like, oh my god. Like, I was starting to get a little anxiety there. Oh my gosh. I can't believe like I don't know. Like I guess you just don't think about it until you're in that situation. It like from an outsider's perspective, it's like, oh, that's easy, like, but it's
Yeah,
easier said than done. That's
yeah. I've
insane.
I've really appreciated what the pandemic gave to me as an artist, because I really did start it. I started like thinking like a producer and thinking like a writer. So the
Sure.
time that I had to spend inside doing administrative work or doing like writing work has been exciting and scary, and I want to do more of that. I mean, I studied dance, I studied voice, I studied acting, like I did, but now I'm studying what's happening behind the scenes, and it's really helping me
Yeah.
understand what it's like to be in front of the scenes. And, I'm just trying to understand our world from all angles these days, which is
Totally.
new and fun.
Yeah, that's I love that. I see like that's exactly like my thought process. I see a lot of like similarities between us. I'm like, wow, I really like you. It's
The feeling's mutual, Eli.
thank you. I know. I'm actually going to school basically for that. I'm doing like arts and entertainment management, and
Oh,
like one of
nice.
my classes this semester is how the entertainment industry works, and I'm like, great, sign me up. Like I was
Great.
like, yeah, like it's fascinating to me just to like see all of these different things. But anyways, enough. Sorry, I get on tangents.
Oh,
Um,
no, please.
so I
When
want to
you find
see.
out about this class, call me. Give me pointers.
Of course, anything. Well, I want to know, like, okay, I know obviously like the homage to Hocus Pocus and everything like that, but you kind of have like these homages to Broadway as well. Like, the Sanderson sisters is like the Schuyler sister and everything. Like, that was brilliant. Like,
Thanks.
I mean, what kind of triggered that? Like, what was that kind of thought process?
That was kind of an easy one. We've been doing the Hamilton parody for probably 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like when Hamilton came out, I was like, well, we know we got to do a Sanderson sisters parody. So I wrote the like live version of it a couple of years ago, and like my rapping is not so great. Like my my like rhyme schemes weren't so like fresh. So I actually brought my friend Heath Saunders on board to help out with the virtual event, and he killed it. I mean, like his rewrites were so smart and
Yeah.
funny, wildly good. But yeah, Broadway's where I'm from. It's what I do. It's what I've studied. It's what I love. So and it's a Broadway Cares event, right? So even
Hmm.
when you go to Broadway Bears, there's usually one very musical theater, like comedy based number, right? So I want to make sure that I'm always having that be a part of what we do. But then also, I want to reach out to the kind of audience that might not know who Broadway is. And so throw a pop tune in there, or throw a pop culture reference in there so that like the world outside of Broadway also feels included. But
Sure.
yeah, so yeah, I don't know.
Oh my god. I love that. That's so fun. It was like I was watching it and I was like, this is such a brilliant idea. Like in a way it's like so simple yet so complicated that it's just like it just makes for perfect theater and like entertainment. It was
Yeah,
like
well,
high
you can
end. I
thank
was like,
you can thank Lin-Manuel Miranda for that because he's the one that wrote the tune. So I just had to fill
fair.
in words, and Heath filled in words. They gave us the scansion and the
Oh, I was
melodies.
just gonna say, like, did you have to like go through a process for that?
Yeah, I actually had a writer's room for the virtual event last year. So it was me and like 5 or 6 other humans that would meet every single Friday for about an hour to 2 hours to really talk about, okay, what is this virtual event? What is the through line? Who are our villains? What songs are we
Right.
utilizing for each villain? So we started at the beginning of June, and then wrote the show all the way up into September. So we were
Right.
meeting every week. So I had
Wow.
geniuses kind of helping guide me the whole time.
And then did you have to get like the rights for like say like to do the Schuyler sisters like music but different words?
Absolutely. I learned a
Wow.
whole lot about music rights working on the virtual event and sync licenses, because a sync license is different than like a mechanical license. The mechanical license you need for the recording of it, the sync license you need for the recording of a video shoot. So a lot of it was kind of throwing
Oh my
myself in
gosh.
like the deep end. And like at first, Katy Perry wouldn't give us permission to use Roar, and like we had already
Right.
shot the music video, and like I was freaking out that we'd spent all this time and money like featuring Julia Madison as Carol Baskin singing Roar. And so I like found Katy Perry's manager on Instagram. I like DM'd him. I left him messages at his office, and he finally got back to me, and I like pled my case to Katy Perry's manager. he went to Katie. I like sent him the video, and I was like, we already shot this. Like, it would be really, So having conversations with Katy Perry's manager and with Lady Gaga's manager and with Lin-Manuel's assistant, and like really pleading my case for Broadway Cares to use these songs. Doja Cat, I mean, her song was like tied up in a bunch of crazy stuff. Like there
Right.
was exclusivity with the song and this movie that it appeared in, and like I had to go all the way to the top of like Warner Brothers to be like,
Stop it.
I mean, it's wild, the kind of journey that I went on with music rights on the show. Like, I
Oh
feel
my
like I can do
God.
anything now.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like, did you kind of like know that going into it, or is it like now that I've learned from that, like this year I have to be like extra careful?
It was truly a learning process. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, I went in being like, well, this is for charity. Like, everyone's going to be on board. It'll be fine. Like, we're raising money for Broadway. Broadway's not happening right now. But, there's so much money tied up in especially pop music,
Yeah.
the popular music in general. So it truly was like, oh, well, I guess maybe I should have thought about this before I shot the music videos, But
Yeah.
I don't know. The way
Wow.
it went, the way that it happened, I mean, we literally got Doja Cat's people, or the people who wrote that Doja Cat song, to sign off on it 24 hours before the live stream. Like,
Oh my God.
and Todrick
Stop.
had already shot the video. Like, Todrick produced his own video in LA, and so he sent us the footage, like fully edited. And then Doja Cat's people were like, "No," and I was like, we have 24 hours to make them say yes. Like, it was like we
Yeah.
were in final edits of the show. We had two different edits of the show. One of them that had the Doja Cat song with Todrick, and one that didn't. So we were just like waiting to see which one to give Broadway Cares for. Like, I mean, it was truly
Oh
some
my
of the most.
God.
I got no sleep that weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh my God, that's insane. I can't. This is just like, this is mind blowing to me to like just listen to. It's just like, but it's so fascinating. That's why I love it. It's all very interesting, but it's all very. There's so much that goes into it that you just don't even realize.
Right.
Anyways, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to someone on the show without talking about their Broadway debut. So, your Broadway debut was Hair, right? And so, I mean, like you said, like, you always wanted to be on Broadway, and then here you are, like, you did it. You made it to Broadway in an original cast. Like, talk to me about the emotions just with that production and just making your Broadway debut.
Ugh. I mean, I remember I was out on tour with a chorus line when I first got a call from my agent being like, they want to see you for Hair. It's for the understudy for Claude. And I was like, well, I'm in Columbus, Ohio or something. Like, I wish I could come in, but like, I can't. So after I left the tour, I came back to the city, and they still hadn't found who they were looking
There.
for. So I
Oh
lucked
wow.
out that they hadn't found that person. So when I auditioned, I here's how it happened. I walked in and I looked a lot like Jonathan Groff, who'd played it at the Delacorte in
Right.
Central Park. I often got stopped on the street by
That is a
people like
huge
think.
compliment.
I know, I take it as a compliment for sure. So like back during Spring Awakening times, people would be like, "Oh my
Right.
god, I loved you in Spring Awakening." I'd be like, "Thank you,"
Right.
So people really thought I was Jonathan Groff for a really long time. So me just walking in the room and kind of looking like the guy that had played the role previous to me, I think really helped my case, right?
Uh-huh.
Because a creative team was looking at the boy that they looked at for the whole summer that they did it in the park. So
Right.
that worked in my favor. And then I sang a song that I've loved since I was in high school. Why, from Tick Tick Boom.
Oh.
That's the song I sang to get the role. I remember I was like, oh, well, this is a show about a bunch of hippies. So I just remember making really odd choices, like sticking my tongue out on certain words of this scene that I was in. And I made like Jim Rado laugh because of a random wacky choice that I made in the audition. So
Yeah.
uh, when I got it, it was like, oh my God. I cried for 10 minutes when I found out that I was cast as a swing and
Right.
Claude's understudy. And then after the fact, I found out that Gavin Creel was playing Claude. So I was like,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. Wait, you mean like my idol? You mean like the guy that I've always aspired to be is the one I'm understudying? So that was kind of mind blowing. And then to actually meet Gavin Creel and to fall deeply in love with him and to like have him show me what it was to be a leading man on stage and off
Mm-hmm.
stage. It was truly an education in what it meant to lead a company, not just artistically, but spiritually and energetically. And
Yeah.
it was around the same time that we were fighting for marriage equality. And so we weren't just like living the life of like the protester hippies on stage. We were also going to rallies in Times Square, and we were marching on
Wow.
Washington for marriage equality and singing Let the Sunshine In behind Lady Gaga in front of 30,000 people, you know. So it was really a movement. It
Right.
felt like we were making change in the world in like 2009 in the same way that like that generation was making change in the world in 1969, you know. So I don't know, that's when like social change and art became like really important to me.
Right.
To always have that at the forefront of everything that I did, and that was a lot to do with Gavin.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh my god, chills, literally. No, it's true. Just like the impact that art can have on literally anyone and anything is just
Right.
the pandemic has taught me that, like
Okay.
like I mean everything, it's just all so related. Yet we're not essential workers and we're not funded properly at all. So that's
I
interesting.
know.
It's very
I think we
very
should be
fun.
considered essential, to be completely honest. You
I
know,
do too.
I
I
think
mean, you
performance
saw.
artists, you know,
Yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
you saw everyone in the pandemic just like, I mean, what did everyone do? They turned to music to calm them down. They turned to movies and TV shows to pass the time. I mean, like,
Right.
they went to us, like, like in so many
Right.
ways. And, like, I mean, just, I don't know. It's mind blowing, but politics. Okay.
Politics.
Right. So okay, before I let you go, we have to talk about your 54 Below show because I am so excited for it. You're paying homage to your hometown in Texas. It's your birthday. How excited are you? Is this like your first time like performing live since the pandemic?
No, I've done a couple of smaller, like solo cabaret kind of gigs. Like I did an outdoor thing upstate in Saratoga last summer.
Oh.
I did a small little gig at like the Friars Club the other night with a piano. But this is my first time to like have a full band and to create a new show and to like really have fun with like my favorite lady singers again. Um, so that's what's exciting, and I've never done a country show. You know,
Yeah.
my first show I did at 54 Below was like so eclectic. It was like about all of the music that I love, and I did country and I did R&B and I did musical theater and I did classical, and like I kind of ran the gambit of musical forms.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm kind of, kind of like how Gaga did like her, what was it? Not Jolene. Was it Jolene? Was that was that
The
album?
wrong person to ask.
Great, it's going well. It's going
Great.
well.
Sorry.
Um, Great reference, Jay. But I don't know. Now I want to kind of like start focusing in on all of these genres that have meant so much to me, so I can do like a deep dive and a deep study into what it means to like do a country show. So I'm just excited. I mean, I thought if I wanted anything for my birthday, what would it be? And it would be to get on stage again and sing with my favorite people and have a live band behind me and share that experience with an audience. So when 54 Below reached out to me and said, "These are some dates we have open. Would you like to do a show?" I saw my birthday on there and I was like, "Yeah, I
Oh
want to do
my
a show on my
god.
birthday." So that's kind of how that all came together.
Oh my god, that's so cool. I didn't know if you did that on purpose or if that was kind of like all 54 Below was kind of offering.
Yeah, it was kind of serendipitous in that way. I mean, I think they gave me like a list of like 20 some odd dates, and I literally saw my birthday. So I
Oh
was
my
like,
god.
this country show that I've had in my head for so long, that's what I should do. Let's go back to my roots. Let's go back home to 54 Below and let's invite all my two favorite lady singers, Amanda Williams
Yes.
Ware and Allison Robinson, who are also my Sanderson sisters every year in the Halloween
Yeah.
show. So yeah, I'm really really excited about it. And those that can't actually make it to Feinstein's 54 Below on September 1st can actually tune into the live stream, because
Yes.
it will be live streamed, which is very very cool. I was so excited that 54 Below added me to that part of what they're doing. So if you're tuning into this and you live somewhere outside of the tri-state area, like tune into the live stream. I think it's only going to be like $15 to tune in on the night of. So
Yeah,
it'd be cool.
totally. If you cannot make it, check out the live stream. But honestly, like, it's so different in person. Like I've been
For
watching
sure.
some of the 54 Below live streams, and then I went to Antonio Cipriano's show at 54 Below, and I was just like, oh my god, it's so much better live.
Of
Like
course.
it is also just like the feeling of just like being in a room with live music again. It is
Right.
just like something that we haven't experienced, so it's like life
Right.
changing. So if you can go to 54 Below on September 1st, I highly recommend. And maybe you can meet Jay and like so many other people, and all of these wonderful, so many people will be there. I mean, you're incredible. You're a star. September
Thanks,
1st,
Eli.
at what time?
9:30 I think is showtime. So it's a kind of a late show. It's a Wednesday night, but come on out. It's going to be a rocking good time.
Yeah, so check it out at 54 Below, or you can watch it at the comfort of your bed or couch or chair, whatever you choose to watch it on the live stream. But Jay, thank you so much for joining me and just talking to me about everything that you have going on. It's so exciting. I never asked, do you have like a date for Hocus Pocus as well?
Yeah, we're still working on that.
Okay.
So we don't have a date set quite yet. If we do the live show, it'll be a certain date. If we do another virtual event, it'll be a certain date. So stay tuned because
Yes.
that'll all be coming to fruition in the next couple weeks.
Amazing. Well, I'll make sure to keep everyone updated and keep plugging it. But this is
Cool.
so exciting. Everyone go check out 54 Below. Stay tuned for Hocus Hocus Pocus. Oh my god, I put a spell on you. It's just so similar. And all of the amazing things. And drop your Instagram handle so you can follow so everyone can follow you along.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at J_A_Johnson, just to make your life really difficult trying to find my
Yay.
Instagram handle.
Amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much again. It was so great to talk to you again. I know we
Thank you,
talked like
Eli.
briefly this earlier this week. But yeah, it was
Right.
great to see you. And
It's good to
thank you
see
for
you
doing
too.
this. Yeah.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
the best.
You're very good at this. You should keep doing this. This was a really fun
Thank
interview.
you. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm so glad you had fun.
Yeah.